Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had a sense of foreboding, danger? You can't quite put your finger on it. Maybe it's been in an underground car park or in a wood. What could be going on? Is this a sixth sense? Is this something that's supernatural? Or could it be, for example, that not consciously but subconsciously you've somehow picked up the fact that the wildlife has gone quiet? Could there be a predator around? Or could it be that over the years you've recorded, again, subconsciously, the weather and the change in the weather when a thunderstorm is due? Could it be perhaps that your pattern matching ability at this point in time can't quite define that it's a human sort of shape lurking in the undergrowth, but there's something that's different enough that says, yeah, you need to send a signal to this person, they need to be aware? Could it simply be that for animals, including humans, to survive, many of them, over tens of thousands of years, have had to adopt quite sophisticated early warning systems? In other words, they've had to predict danger in advance to survive, not only that day, but for the species to survive. It's one of the reasons it is suggested that people are drawn to headlines which talk about danger or catastrophe or things going wrong. We're hardwired, in essence, to look out for that stuff. And of course the media outlets know that. But we're hardwired because our very survival could depend on it. It could be all those things. Of course, a rational explanation is almost always the best starting point as we try and define what causes us to behave and react and think in certain ways. But could there be something else going on? Could it be that in some situations and some things that have indeed been recorded in history, that explanation isn't quite good enough? Let's then look at some famous premonitions. Sometimes they're called predictions, and those two words appear to get used interchangeably. But anyway, from this article, during a salon dinner in Paris in 1788, French author and occultist Jacques Cazot predicted that King Louis the XVI, 16th I think that is, would meet his end during the Revolution. If there's going to be a revolution, you would imagine that it's going to be quite a dangerous time for those who are being revolutioned against. He also exclaimed that many other aristocrats, some of whom attended the party that evening, would be beheaded, die of poisoning, or die by suicide. The French Revolution started in May 1789, and Cazot's predictions came true. One after the other, nobles were beheaded. Again, it's a revolution. Not that I'm recommending such behaviour. 4 years later, King Louis the XVI also lost his head in front of a large crowd in Paris. Cazot wasn't in the crowd, however, as he'd been executed via guillotine the year before after being denounced as a royalist. Now, I'm not going to say he didn't see that one coming. Obviously not. It's not recorded in this article. Whether he did predict his own death, I don't know. But anyway, prediction, premonition, whatever you want to call it, was that extraordinary? Some people suggest yes. In Morgan Robertson's 1898 novel Futility, there is an unsinkable megaship called the Titan. In the novel, the Titan collides with an iceberg in an April voyage while travelling across the sea. Because the Titan only holds a minimum number of lifeboats, most of its passengers perish when it sinks. 14 years later, the, in inverted commas, unsinkable RMS Titanic launched its maiden voyage, or was launched on its maiden voyage. And on the 15th of April 1912, it struck an iceberg and tragically sank, killing over 1,500 on board. Because the Titanic had the minimum legal number of lifeboats, most of its passengers died in the icy waters of the North Atlantic. So,
striking an iceberg, hazard for those ships then. The Titanic, yeah, I mean, that's interesting that Morgan picked up on that. Although, is it that unusual for a so-called mega ship, a big ship, and the minimum number of lifeboats? Now, is that potentially, in the novel, I haven't read the novel, a combination of maybe corporate greed, which we still see today, of course, and perhaps an unshakable belief in the technology, which is also dangerous. It's interesting though, isn't it? Then, next up, predicting that the United States would someday have an African-American president. Not that impressive. Predicting that the United States would have an African-American president a full 40 years before it happens, and picking his name as President Obama, well, now you've got our attention. Stand on Zanzibar, an award-winning 1969 science fiction novel set in 2010, was just 2 letters of the real future president's not-so-common last name. How do you begin to explain that? Author John Brunner also predicted DVRs, I think that's digital video recorders, satellite news, terror threats, they've been around for a while, and legal marijuana. And marijuana's been around for a while, legal and illegal. But we still can't get over that President Obama character. I mean, it isn't the same, is it? It's not Obama. And if you change a couple of letters in many words, they become quite different. However, that is interesting. It's almost as if the author of the book Futility and Stand on Zanzibar were tuning in to something. But could it be coincidence? Yes, of course it could. Next up, Mark Twain predicted his own death. Samuel Langhorne Clemens, Mark Twain, was born in November 1835, a short while after Halley's Comet had made an appearance in the sky. In 1909, the Huckleberry Finn author was quoted as saying by his biographer, Albert Bigelow Paine, "I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It is coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it. It will be the greatest disappointment of my life if I don't go out with Halley's Comet. The Almighty has said, no doubt. Now there are these 2 unaccountable freaks. They came in together, they must go out together." Sure enough, on the 21st of April 1910, just one day after the famous comet reappeared, Twain passed away from a heart attack. It wasn't the same day though. And is that because he was so focused on it? Was he stressed? Did that cause him to have a heart attack in the build-up to the comet reappearing? It is, however, of course, interesting. Next up, Reva Steenkamp's teenage drawings and the shooting incident. Reva Steenkamp was a South African model and girlfriend of Paralympic champion Oscar Pistorius. She was shot dead by Oscar, who had supposedly mistaken her for an intruder. But according to her parents, Reva Steenkamp had a premonition of her death, but much before the actual incident happened. Her parents claim that Reva was a teenager when she drew a picture which had an angel standing near a stairway leading up to the sky. It also had a guy standing with a gun in his hand. Her parents have claimed this was a premonition by Reva of her own death. A tragic death. Absolutely. I remember it being reported clearly a few years ago now, but still that incident stays with me. Horrible. However, was that a premonition? Somebody with a gun and a drawing and an angel? Maybe. The list goes on, and I will put the links to all of the articles that I have covered here, because there are many more examples of premonitions, or as they're sometimes called, predictions. But what are they? Are they just coincidences? I mean, if there are millions upon billions upon trillions of interactions and thoughts happening every day on this planet, is it not possible that amidst all those things that never seem to be noted and noticed by any of us, that occasionally we will pick out those patterns? We will remember, hold on a second, somebody said they had a dream about that. But how often do we pay no attention to other dreams that people talk about because it came to nothing? And I'm not saying that a premonition isn't real. What I'm saying is that I'm not sure that what we often hear about, the famous ones, are actually, well, premonitions at all. They may simply be coincidences. And particularly when they are handed down. I'm not saying these stories were, but there are often potentially apocryphal accounts. My suspicion is that premonitions are real for some people sometimes, because I think it is part of that mix of trying to predict threat. I thought it might be useful to look at how psychology describes premonitions. From this article, according to the American Psychological Association, a premonition, usually referred to as precognition in psychological settings, is the ability of a person to predict or perceive that they have predicted a future event. Natalie Rosado, LMHC licensed mental health counsellor, founder and owner of Tampa Counselling Place, there's a free plug, agrees with this take. In the context of mental health and psychology, premonitions are often linked to a person's subconscious processing of information, where the brain is picking up on subtle cues we don't immediately register consciously, she says. This can lead to a sense of knowing something is going to happen without understanding how or why. Absolutely, agree with that 100%. That, I think, in most cases is exactly what's going on. That's what I've been alluding to in this video. And then the article goes on, debunking misconceptions about premonition. There are a couple of, I think that's meant to say, myths and misconceptions about premonition that it's worth exploring. First, as much as we would like to believe premonitions have a role in predicting the future, or that they do so in some spiritual, supernatural, or mythical manner, this isn't true. In most cases, they're simply products of our highly complex information processing system in the brain. And it says, Astrom describes, I think that's Brittany Astrom, who's a marriage and family therapist. And I agree with that 99.999% of the time. But I think it's really important that we keep that door open just a little bit to consider that maybe there are things that cannot be explained by the subconscious picking up cues and clues that we aren't consciously aware of. That maybe things happen that aren't simply a coincidence because of the volume of information that's out there. Time isn't linear, we're often told by very clever scientists. We just experience it in a linear way. And with the advent of more understanding of the universe through quantum physics, I'm intrigued by this entanglement thing. The spooky action at a distance, I believe Einstein called it. And if particles can become entangled, is it possible? Because apparently the information is transmitted instantaneously. It's not faster than light, physicists say, because it isn't traveling. But it seems to be instantaneous, which is kind of faster than light. But anyway, I'll leave that up to them to explain. But my point is that if that can happen, that's so mysterious, it's so odd, is it not then possible that we could receive information that just paid no attention to time in the way that these entangled particles seem to pay no attention to distance. I don't know. I am intrigued. Certainly, I've had one experience. Well, a few experiences where I've had a bit of foreboding and things have gone wrong. But one I'll share with you. I was working in a hospital, and at that point in time I was in charge of some bits and pieces, and I walked into the server room, the computer server room, and I happened to be with the IT manager. And I said, what is above this room as a matter of interest? And he said, well, this, and this. Turned out it was a lot of pipe work. And I said, that's so dangerous, we should move that. And he said, yeah, I'll get round to it. And I had a feeling that we needed to do this urgently. And I called him later on that day and I said, look, big favour to ask. I know this is a pest, but I'm really worried about that. I don't have a good feeling about it. Could you move it today? And he did. What a superstar. What a great guy. Moved it all out. And you've guessed it, the next day, a huge flood. Now, was that because in that room I could, without consciously being aware of it, hear some change in the water supply? Was there a buckle already in the ceiling that I was seeing and yet not seeing? Was there a change in the temperature and humidity that somehow was alerting me to something going on? I don't know, but that was just strange. And when we have those things, I think it is important not to just dismiss them out of hand, to be open to the possibility that, yeah, something was going on. Anyway, what do you think? Have you had experiences that you would describe as a premonition? Has someone else told you about an experience that they've had that you find to be quite compelling, hard to explain away? Or perhaps you know of some famous premonitions that I haven't covered here that you've looked at, you've investigated, and come to the conclusion that there is no rational explanation at all. There has to be something else going on. If so, let me know. I'm very interested. For the moment, for me, bye for now. And if you have watched this long into the video and you haven't subscribed, please do. If you have subscribed, thank you very much. If you know of people who you think would enjoy subscribing to this channel, please let them know about it. I really appreciate it. It does make a big difference. Right now, it looks like more and more people are looking at the videos, they're watching the videos. The hours that the people have been devouring them have shot up, which is great. That's fantastic. It does also help me if you subscribe, and it's free.